Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Sunday, March 7th, 2021, and today we're going to be talking about Senator Lisa Murkowski from the state of Alaska and how President Trump is vowing to campaign against her, labeling her as disloyal and sort of indicating, not sort of, absolutely indicating that there will be a primary opposition to Lisa Murkowski. Now, why is this so significant and why it actually might not directly impact the outcome of her election results is what's going to be covered in this video. Now, I first saw this headline on CNN, but it was first reported by Politico, but we're actually going to go through this briefly because they do discuss a few things, and they touch on some really important issues and what this means for President Trump moving forward. So he said on Saturday, which was yesterday, that he plans to campaign against her in Alaska, which means he's going to be visiting the state and pretty much just endorsing whichever primary candidate he can in order to get her out of the Senate. He says that she represents her state badly and her country even worse. I do not know where other people will be next year, but I know where I will be in Alaska, campaigning against a disloyal and very bad senator. Now, this is something that President Trump has used as leverage, this bully pulpit type of thing where he was pretty much arguing to these Republicans, telling them, if you vote a certain way, if you do not support me, if you speak out against me, I will primary you. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. After Lisa Murkowski voted to convict President Trump and hasn't always supported his agenda from day one, has put them at a contentious spot. When I say she doesn't support his agenda, I mean she votes with him 94% of the time. But that 6% is what irks him. And that one vote of conviction ultimately puts him at a point where he's saying undoubtedly he will be visiting Alaska and will be attacking her there and making sure, or at least in his eye, that she will not be elected. And he pretty much calls her a rhino, a Republican in name only, saying that she doesn't fully represent the Republican Party. It's just something that, you had that R by the name so they can win their election. But he's sort of arguing that they're, in fact, a Democrat or an independent rather than a conservative senator. But then Mitch McConnell said that the Senate Republicans will support Lisa Murkowski. They will support her in her reelection bid. So we will see what happens with Rick Scott and the NRSC, the National Republican Senatorial Committee, which is bent on reelecting United States senators that are Republicans and electing them to the Senate in the first place. But we will see, because that will put them at odds. The Save America PAC, which is Donald Trump's, and the NRSC is going to have a very conflicting view because Mitch McConnell doesn't run the NRSC. He was the chairman in the past, but that was decades ago. Now he's the Senate Minority Leader, but Rick Scott is going to have to be one of the few people who makes that final decision. But we will see what happens. This will be very interesting. He says absolutely the NRSC will back Lisa Murkowski, but we will see, because it is going to be kind of difficult to go against President Trump when he's had such a big impact. I think the Senate has been less supportive of President Trump and his endeavors. The majority of House Republicans voted to uphold the electoral objection to the battleground states of Arizona and Pennsylvania. And then looking at the Senate, though, just a few, maybe 6, 7 senators, depending on the vote, voted to uphold the electoral certification. Uphold the electoral objection. So pretty much, what we saw was that just very few senators actually voted to say the election was rigged. The majority of House Republicans did. Why? Because those House Republicans are up in 2 years. Some of these senators are up in 4 years, right? 4, 6 years. Some of them are up in 2 years, but the majority of them are up in 4 to 6 years. So people will forget about this, but this will be something that immediately follows. So in a year from now, we're talking about primaries. Some of these House Republicans who voted to go against the calling the election a rigged election, essentially, in the House of Representatives, they probably will be attacked by Trump-like candidates saying that they weren't fully fledged supporters of President Trump and therefore they should be primaried. So the reason is that some senators feel as if they're at a position where they would be afraid of a primary, but for most of them, they aren't. But for the House, it's a much bigger deal. And that's exactly what we're seeing here with Lisa Murkowski, because she's one of the few Republicans who's in a somewhat competitive state. And I use that term, very relatively, just because compared to other states, yes, it is competitive in nature, but it's not one of the closest states we've seen on our electoral map. But Alaska might actually end up being a swing state in the future. And I know some of you guys are probably cringing at me saying that, but I'll talk about the election results in 2020 and why I think so. So the first thing that I would point out is that Alaska was closer than Colorado, which you might not be too surprised about, but Colorado was a hard-fought swing state in 2012 and 2016, and then also closer than Virginia. And Virginia had been a Republican stronghold for decades. Bill Clinton couldn't even carry it, didn't even go to Jimmy Carter. So looking at Alaska, right, we are seeing Donald Trump only win it by 10 points. And I know, only win it by 10 points. It seems like I'm trying to pretty much say his victory wasn't too large, but only by 10 points when you have other states that were previously swing states voting in larger margins goes to show that Alaska has significantly narrowed down. I mean, it went to McCain by 23 in 2008, Romney by a little bit larger in 2012, and then in 2016, it narrows down to around a 14-point victory, and then in 2020, it's a 10-point victory, almost single digits. So it could be a competitive state in the future, but here's why Lisa Murkowski is actually pretty solid about her re-election chances. Well, history speaking, in 2010, she won as a write-in candidate. She didn't win her primary. We want to talk about a primary? She's been primaried before. She was the incumbent Republican, and she lost the primary to Joe Miller. Sure, it was a close result. She lost by just around 2 percentage points, but she ended up saying, I'm not going to, leave the ballot. I'm the incumbent senator. This was my father's, I believe it was her father's seat. It might be, let's see, 2004. It might not have been her father's seat. Let's see. I know she was appointed. Let's see. Senator appointed to the rest of her father's unexpired term when he resigned in 2012. Right. So we are seeing, first of all, she's never won by a majority. Never in her entire electoral history has she been won by a majority. But she was primaried in 2010. And this was the Tea Party wave type of election. And she was primaried by Joe Miller. Joe Miller also ran in 2016, which I will show you in just a moment. But looking at the eventual result, essentially what happened was that she was going to say, I'm going to run as a third-party candidate. I'm going to run as a write-in campaign. And, this came down to whether or not people actually were spelling her name right or whether or not she was actually supposed to be counted altogether, went to courts, and they said, count the ballots that misspelled Murkowski's last name. It's very clear what their intent was, very clear who they wanted to vote for. So Lisa Murkowski won with a write-in campaign, and isn't that something? And the Democrats only got 23.5% of the vote. The reason why Murkowski won is because they realized if not her, it would be Joe Miller, and a lot of Democrats crossed over. The state was not 75% Republican. The Democrat, first of all, just underperformed. And looking at the results here, with Lisa Murkowski, she was just very fortunate enough to get a lot of the Democratic vote. Now, the same might actually be said in 2016. What you'll notice is that the Democrats only got 11.62% of the vote. So the Democratic vote certainly was split. But 2016 was also the same year where Donald Trump won the state by 14 points and actually narrowed it down from 2012. So Donald Trump is not too popular himself in the state of Alaska. He had one of the narrowest Republican victories we've seen in decades. And Lisa Murkowski in this state was able to win yet again against Joe Miller, but also got a lot of support from Democrats. What we saw was that there was crossover support because if not her, Joe Miller, right? So looking at her margin here and comparing it to the Democrats, you might think, oh, isn't the state 89% Republican because the Democrats only got 11% of the vote? No. She has a strong history here, a strong base, and even though she may be unpopular, this is not her first time being unpopular, I'll tell you that, she will still be able to win, not only because she has won by a plurality now, which is now impossible in Senate elections in Alaska. Talk about that in literally 1 minute. The reason why she will win is because of this new system that will be implemented into 2022. So when I'm looking at this list and I'm looking at the potential names, Laura Ingraham, Sarah Palin, Mike Dunleavy, what she could do is remain on the ballot as a Republican because there will not be this Republican type of primary where she will be eliminated, or if she got on the ballot some other way, we would be looking at an election held through ranked choice voting. This would be the first Senate race held by ranked choice voting outside of the state of Maine. So what does ranked choice voting mean? Essentially, voters rank their candidates. This was actually passed on the same ballot as Donald Trump. It was question number 2 on the Alaska ballot, and it passed with 51% of the vote. So narrow, but a majority does rule. And that's exactly what would happen here. Rather than allow people to win by a plurality, ranked choice voting would actually force people to choose between 2 candidates. Essentially, you would rank your candidates. If you're a Democrat, you would say the Democrat number 1, and then the Republican, Lisa Murkowski, number 2 likely, and then someone else. But in this situation, if your candidate doesn't make the top 2, or essentially, let's take it, for instance, let me back up for a moment. There's 4 people on the ballot, right? Whoever makes the top 3 will move on, and then whoever voted for that 4th person is ranked number 1, you'll move down to rank number 2. And then it goes to the top 2. And then once you go between the top 2, you'll eliminate the people who voted for the third candidate as number 1 or number 2 and go down to their next choice. So essentially, it would allow you to rank your candidates from your favorite to least favorite, or even just leaving it blank, where you could say, I want this person to win, but if not them, then this person. And then if it comes down to that point where it's a head-to-head matchup, you may have voted for the Democrat as number 1, but your vote would count for Lisa Murkowski at the end of the day if she makes it into the top 2, if your Democratic candidate does not. And that's exactly what we will likely see in the state of Alaska, because Donald Trump can do whatever he wants here, but as long as Lisa Murkowski is on the ballot in some way, she will get a lot of support from Democrats as well as a lot of support from those Republican Romney McCain-esque voters. And while her approval rating may be, we're talking 30 to 40%, that doesn't seem good, but that means Democrats aren't approving of her. But I can guarantee you they will choose her 10 times over a Trump Republican, 10 times over whoever Donald Trump chooses to back. So Lisa Murkowski is fine. She's safe. she will be completely fine. She can switch to the Democratic Party if she wants to, or be an independent and caucus with the Democrats. She actually just recently announced she will absolutely not be doing that. But if she did, I don't even think she would lose. This new ranked choice voting system puts her at a point where she could win for any election she wants. She could win. It won't impact the presidential level, but it will be used in Senate elections and House elections. It also only has one House district, so Murkowski is fine no matter what she does. And Donald Trump's threat here holds no weight in the state of Alaska. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch and then a playlist for my 2022 Senate election videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.